We'd like to welcome you to the BlackUSA.News morning show. My name's Donnie Glover, and today we're going all the way to Texas. We have with us Cheryl Smith. She is the publisher, the very fine publisher of Texas Metro News. Good morning, boss lady. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. It's a blessing to be here with you. And thanks so much for having me. Thanks so much.
Well, the pleasure's mine. I should also thank Mr. Muhammad Thomas for making the introduction back during the summer. Tell us. Well, first, I didn't know that you had a radio background. I have a radio background.
Yes, you know what? I guess it goes back to the days when you had to do everything. It's really interesting because I don't know if you remember, there was a little conflict about folks saying that rappers were becoming actors. But if you go back to the Sammy Davis Jr.'s, the Lena Hornes, those Diane Carrolls, those people were actually multifaceted entertainers. They did more than one thing. And I had the pleasure of, initially I was a print journalist, came from Jersey to Florida A&M, and but I did a lot of broadcasts while I was there. And I interned with Capitol Press Corps for a television station there. And then I got to Dallas and was working for the newspaper and got a call saying, "Can you say what you write?" And of course I said no. And then 22 years later, I was still at the station. And so
it speaks for itself, huh?
Hey, but it makes you have more of a respect. It makes you have more respect for other crafts because I studied it. I participated in classes. I didn't just walk in there. And that's the difference. I didn't have what they're talking about today. They're talking about an imposter syndrome and saying it's real. And I said, you know what? If you go in there with the receipts, you don't have to worry about anybody making you feel like you're an imposter, because if you have a certain age, they made you feel like that. I don't care how many receipts you walked in with. So today I say, practice, get your work done, do the research, study, learn your craft. And then when you walk into a room, you don't have to worry about whether I shouldn't be here, because believe me, there were people who came in before you. And, you know, we can say what we want to, even as we look at a President Barack Obama or Vice President Kamala Harris. They weren't the first qualified to hold those positions. So we have to get over that and just make sure we're prepared and that we have our stuff together. When the radio station called and I got with Sean Rabb, who is a veteran television person here and radio, and I started learning the craft, so that eventually I got to a point where I was able to interview, where I was able to sit toe to toe with wonderful Dick Gregory or Minister Louis Farrakhan or Diane Carroll, or just a number of people, and have those do what journalists do.
So tell me about KDDA. That was the radio station, right?
At KKDA. KKDA was known for, it was an A&M station, and then the owner bought KKDA FM, and then he bought KRNB. And it was actually a station, you would say, to Tom Joyner here in this market. That's where he got his start. And actually, Steve Harvey also. Steve Harvey used to be on our morning show with Willis Johnson. So it has a long history. Millie Jackson was there. Just a number of people have come through that station. It's not Black owned, but it had the #1 top hip hop station. And then KKDA was actually, they said it was the music you grew up listening to.
And this was Dallas?
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Wow. Okay, because I wanted to, you answered it. I was wondering if it were a Radio 1 station, but this was a separately owned station.
Right. Service broadcasting. And interesting you mentioned Radio 1, because I used to call the wonderful Kathy Hughes, and I would tell them, we don't have a Black-owned radio station in Dallas. We don't have one. We need one. And one day she called me and she said, Cheryl, I have some news for you. And you can't tell anyone. Well, I'm a person, I pride myself on, if you want somebody else to know, you tell them. But so I didn't usually don't feel any pressure when someone calls me to tell me something because it's between me and them. But because she said, don't tell anybody, it put the pressure on. And I said, oh my, oh my. And then she told me she was buying stations. So she actually has 2 stations in this market now.
So do you still do radio?
Do I still do radio? Actually, my last stint, we had a radio station, KHVN, and that's a gospel station. And well, time gets away from me with COVID, but a few months ago, I subbed for the news guy there. And when I was at KKDA, we started simulcasting on Blog Talk Radio. And then after KKDA was sold to Koreans, which was really made the community really upset in this market because they wanted it to stay Black owned. But after it was sold, I kept doing Blog Talk Radio. So we're on like 7 days a week. And in fact, Ashley Moss was supposed to be on today at 11 o'clock, but we're having power outages here in Texas. You know, we had people that were up all night because we do have snow here. And me being from Jersey, it's kind of cute, 1 inch, 2 inches or whatever. But it shuts down everything here. And I don't know if you heard about the big accident in Fort Worth last week where there were like 100 cars and there were several fatalities. And so Texas doesn't do.
This was from road conditions?
Yes. And there's something which I had said interestingly on Roland Martin on his show had folks debating whether you put salt or sugar in grits. And which one do you do?
I mean, I don't use a lot of salt, but I wouldn't be using sugar.
Exactly.
Salt.
Well, so you use salt. And one thing I posed yesterday, a question I posed was, in these icy, snowy conditions, do you use salt or sand? Salt or sand, because they use sand for the most part here. And
salt has more melting qualities. I thought the iodine.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. And so then I've heard people here say, okay, but the salt messes up your car. Well, would you rather have a messed up car
or a crash car?
Yes. And so, but they say we're sanding the highways. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
I thought Atlanta didn't know.
Well, you know what? You can't say nothing about Georgia till the next election because Georgia.
Fair enough. On that note, tell me what was happening. We saw what was happening in Georgia. What was happening during the election, the campaigning in Texas?
Oh, let me tell you, we need to have a serious conversation with the Democratic Party.
Why?
Because they have taken us for granted. They have taken us for granted, and we could have possibly had more senators to vote the right way on Saturday had the Democratic Party, to me, done better by Black people, because there were viable Black candidates that were running for Senate. And the Democratic Party, especially to me, it appears, and especially in Texas, it appears to not push Black male candidates, especially Black male candidates. But we had a state senator who has been in office like over 25 years, running for Senate to oust Senator Cornyn. And the Democratic Party backed a white female veteran never served political office, and had a sketchy even relationship with the Democratic Party. And he wiped the floor with her. And then when you look at it, Donnie, MJ Hager was her name. The senator was Senator Royce West. Um, Not only was Senator West campaigning against her because the Democratic Party, and this is something I think the Democratic Party should not do, don't come down into state politics. Do not come down into state politics. And the Democratic Party as a whole should not endorse until the
state does it.
Yeah, and they should stay out of it. When the state does it, it should be after the field has been narrowed and we're getting ready to go into the election, but not when you have 6 or 7 people running and then you come down and you give money to this one candidate. She got millions of dollars from the Democratic Party, from women's groups, and then John Cornyn campaigned. He spent millions of dollars campaigning against Senator West. So with Senator West having all of those millions going the other way, she still did not beat him by 50,000 votes. So that shows she was not a viable candidate. And
so help me understand the power of Black Democrats there.
Well, let's talk about the power of Black Democrats everywhere, because and I'm hoping we're going to see different with folks who are in office in Washington, because Democrats like to say they do the right thing. Republicans like to win. And they showed you that on Saturday, because no matter how much they felt that Donald Trump was guilty, what did they do?
They voted against impeaching him.
You know, and the travesty of it all is you had these mediocre attorneys who can now go out and talk about how they successfully defended Donald Trump when the odds were stacked in their favor anyway. And it was like, who was going to have a conscience? And I think whoever didn't have a conscience should be asking themselves after the next election, was it worth it?
How did you feel when the verdict came down? I mean, we all knew what was going to happen, but did you get any, did you become anxious about 4 years from now?
No, I became anxious about the next day, because I said every day we got to get up working. We can't wait till the next 4 years. We have to make it, we have to solidify it and solidify the base. And I'll tell you that yesterday, the president of the National Association of Black Journalists, and I'm the national secretary, but Dorothy Tucker made comments, because we have the National Press Foundation that appointed, like, I'm going to say it was over 20 fellows, people. And when you see the graphic, nobody on there looks like you or I. And so we have to look at those optics, and also we have to look at, I look at everything, and I'm looking at even watching the hearings, and I saw very few people who look like me running around there. And a good friend, the late great Dick Gregory, told me, when people are telling you to look to the left, you better pivot back to the right, because something is going on. So while we were talking about that farce impeachment hearing on the left, on the right, Supreme Court was talking about minority representation in broadcast industry. And they were talking about the feasibility of Black, minority, and women-owned radio stations, television stations. And this is really critical, because we don't have much, especially Black. So we have to be really concerned when something is going on so much that it is a distraction. And the impeachment trial, to me, was, I knew what to vote. I knew couldn't be that many who had a conscience and who was going to vote the right thing and be on the right side of history. So I wasn't disappointed. They didn't disappoint me. They didn't let me down. And I said, okay, the issue for me is, while I have an issue with the Democrats who would say let's get along and talking about unity and everything, I want my Republican Black men and women to explain this to me and help me understand it. And I haven't been able to get that yet. And I just wonder, how do they feel? How do you really push that narrative when there are so few of you and you see so few of you advancing? I'm not saying the Democratic Party is the panacea. I'm not saying they're the greatest, and I would love to have our own, but I am saying that we have to hold both of them accountable. Both of them have dogged us out. And
Do you play chess, Cheryl?
I used to, and this is really funny. You know how I learned how to play chess? On the streets of East Orange, New Jersey. And we actually, and I'm not ashamed to say it, we actually sat outside playing. We cut out the board and everything from a cereal box. And we sat out there playing chess. We are at war. And
That's what I'm thinking. And it's the reason I asked you is, in chess, it's all about being moves ahead of the opponent.
mm-hmm.
One move that I've been pondering for the past decade is seeing Black people flood the Republican Party.
Okay.
I mean, if we keep doing what we've been doing, we're going to keep getting what we've been getting. We got to do something new. I don't know what it is, but we got to do something new, because we're like a dog chasing its tail.
And they give a few. We have to change a lot of things in our way of thinking, and that's why I like what. And unfortunately, I working at a time when the calls are going on Saturday. We have to do for self.
Yeah.
I think about a lot of things that are going on, and people will say whatever they want to, but sometimes I just be wishing the FOI would march up somewhere. I just really do, because I know that no one messes with the Nation of Islam. And those brothers, I grew up seeing the power and the strength in just how they carry themselves. But even when I think about where do we go from here, we have some work to do. We have to hold people accountable, and we have to hold not just ourselves accountable. We big and bad up against another Black person. Go after some of them white folks who you feel are affronting you. Dick Gregory also used to say that when he said he had friends who say, we want to help you put an end to Black on Black crime. And Mr. Gregory said he would ask him, well, who do you suggest we commit crimes on? If you don't want us to commit them on ourselves, which the crimes that happen are even a crime of proximity. You do things where you are. That's why is domestic violence. You don't go next door to somebody else's house to beat up their wife when your wife is right there. And we have to put an end to it, or we have to call it out and address it. But I don't want to hear explainers. I don't want to hear people apologizing, and I don't want to hear us holding other folks to a lesser standard. I went to this Black restaurant and they didn't smile at me. Okay, they don't smile at you, the other ones either. And you keep going back and you keep giving your money, and you don't worry about what kind of car the owner's driving. That was an interesting thing at KKDA, the owner, Hyman Charles. There were a number of people there. Tom Joyner was there after him. Skip Murphy came. Nanette Lee, comedian. A number of people there. And so when you pulled into the parking lot, you saw a lot of nice luxury cars. The owner drove a Mercury something to the station.
Oh,
A Mercury. That's what he drove. And while he had enough money to buy every car in that lot,
kept
but
it simple.
yeah, what he spent his money on, and we have to reinvest. We have to, especially during this time, we're dealing with some really tough times, and our businesses are suffering, and we have to make that extra effort. You know, I'm thinking about today. It's snowing here. Well, it's not snowing, but the snow is down here in Dallas. A lot of businesses, a lot of our black-owned restaurants are closed. Some of them are closed anyway on Mondays because they're used to black people on Mondays. We're eating leftovers. Essentially, so Monday, a lot of restaurants are closed anyway. But we need to go and support those restaurants. We need to go and support the hair care companies and radio. We need
That's
to.
what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about Texas Metro News. How did you come up with that? I'm a newspaper guy, radio, black media, all of that. But I have always admired Texas Metro News, newsletters, social media, and I imagine you have a staff of a couple hundred people considering all of the work that you put out there.
It'll take a nation of millions to keep us back, you know. But we actually, you know, I was doing newspaper and then doing radio, and this from radio. Um, Folks used to send me information, and there wasn't any way to get it out. I was no longer with any of the papers in this market, so I just started doing like a little newsletter, telling about things going on, telling who my upcoming guests were, because at that time this wasn't happening. This wasn't happening what we're doing right now, and so I started sending the information out, and so folks started sending more and more information to me, and then finally I remember my first ad came. Someone called and they said, "Well, how much is an ad?" Well, I didn't have anything on. Like, please, you know. And so I gave them a figure that another newspaper, the Dallas Weekly that I worked for, what they said a full page was. And so when they sent me a check, that first check,
Come
Donnie,
on,
I
come
held
on.
on to it for like 2.5 months. I didn't know what to do with it because I was not ready. But then I had to go back to uh, when I was in grad school. It was my master's is in business, and I remember back in grad school, I did a business plan and marketing plan for a magazine for women of color because you would think black people didn't get married. So I said I would do one, and I never did. So I just went back to those notes and I said, let me pull it together. And then shortly thereafter, a publisher of other papers here told me that someone had some on the market. And I said, no, I'm not interested in that. And he said, well, you ought to give it a try. And I saw what the paper was, but then I thought about what I could do if I had my own. And so the brother gave me a deal. I said, no, I'm not feeling that, only because I was trying to flex that Jersey in me and not take the first deal that came my way. So I told him, I said, I'm not feeling that. And he said, well, what if you give me this much? And he gave me a certain period of time that he would buy the papers back from me if they were not successful. The paper that I bought went from being, there were two papers. One of them was Garland Journal, and the other one was Coomber Herald, and it was in Greenville, Texas. Greenville, Texas, I don't know if you heard about it, but they had a sign that said like the blackest land and the whitest people. And I was like, I'll never be in Greenville. So my friend said, well, you don't have to keep the paper there. So I changed the name. I just shut that down and made Texas Metro News. And I started trying to bring that news that would empower uplift. I just remember the black press I know, and you know, you found out when someone was born, when they went to school, and especially when they went to college, when they got a job, when they got married, and then when they died, or in between that, if they when they celebrated anniversary, the black press had that in there because that was the place we could go, and that's why I'm such a stickler about courtesies because I called my uncle last night, and he lives in Newark, New Jersey.
Brick City.
Yes, yes. And I was telling him happy birthday. He's 80 years old. He's 80 years old yesterday. And I said, isn't it ironic? Is that why you became such a lover? But anyway, I digress. But anyway, when I called him and he was telling me, he said, you know what? You have always called me Uncle Eddie. He said, you know, he was telling me about some of my other cousins. They just Eddie this and Eddie that. And I'll never stop calling. But that's the era we live in now. But I don't blame these young people for being disrespectful. I blame their parents who should know.
Right. Yeah, it started at home.
It starts at home. And plus, mine is steeped in the black press and just America, because America disrespects black people. The mainstream media disrespected us. There was a time if you had 10 doctorates, they would not call you Dr. Donnie Glover. They wouldn't even call you by your name. The media disrespected black people so much that I said we're going to respect them in my publications. Yeah, I capitalized the B in black, and I interchange. It depends on how I'm feeling, whether I say African American or black, because some people don't like the African American. If I'm really trying to get deep down and maybe intimidate you, I say, then the black comes out.
Yeah, I tried to be nice. I tried to be palatable.
Yeah,
non-threatening.
Yeah, and so that's what and so what we did, even when this happened, when COVID happened, I was already trying to see how we could continue to be of need, because I'm a strong believer in those people who are with me during tough times. These are tough times, so we try to be there. So I didn't cut down on my printing run. And even though a lot of our papers go to churches, churches were closed. So I went to black-owned restaurants and said, hey, you're doing to-go orders. If you put my paper in your to-go orders, I will give you a free ad in the paper.
Teamwork.
Oh, it worked so much that I'm re-examining our model for after COVID is over.
Amen. Amen.
Because I deal with a lot of things. We didn't cut them out. We try to go where people are and everything. We were already doing like banquets and NAACP, Black Chamber, sororities, fraternities, having events. You know, the thing about it is, though, sometimes you have some black people who don't respect, don't love, and don't care. And you try to give them the paper, and they act like you trying to give them a disease or something. And the way they pass you off, oh, never mind, just fluff, just waving their hand at you like, get out of my face. And I've seen this, I've written about it before with the Nation of Islam, because I would see the brothers out there 100 degrees selling the paper, and they go up to a car and black people wouldn't even acknowledge them. They're gonna let their window up. It's not like they're trying to steal from you or something. They're trying to sell you information. They're not begging you. They're begging you for something. They're trying to sell you a paper. And sometimes I call it self-hatred. It has to be, because what else would make you deny your people so much?
I got something for you. So right now I'm working on my second book. My first book is Unapologetically Black. The book that's coming out in the next month or so is on Black Wall Street. And one of the things I learned about Oklahoma made me look at Texas.
Okay. Oklahoma
had as many as 50 to 70 black towns. And then I learned that Texas is the same way. Who knew that Texas had 50 black towns?
And they stayed in a town. It was, and I say that because interesting, when I came to Texas, there were people in parts of Dallas who never went to other parts of Dallas. It was like black people stay over here. Black people don't go to these malls. And it was amazing, you know, what I saw. It was really different for me.
That's segregation.
You know, and well, you know what? Some people might say it was a good thing.
Yeah. We did well by ourselves.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about, and my uncle and I were talking because my uncle played. There were a lot of leagues in Newark that played baseball. Black people, young boys, aren't playing baseball like they did back in the 60s and 70s. And
the game has changed, and it's very expensive to get your young people. I mean, a bat these days costs $400 for a baseball bat.
Okay, and to that I have to say, did Larry Doby, Satchel Paige, did they have that bat?
No, they had old stuff, and they made the best of it.
Exactly, and we have built a culture that before you do anything, you got to have the best. And it's like, no, get out there, and if you can do good with the least. You know, I'm saying I'm able to do what we're doing with Texas Metro News with a little bit. Just give me a lot. I've proven that I deserve a lot versus the mentality we have today will give me, you know, give you an example. When you apply for a job, and I tell young people, I don't care how much you think you're worth, look at the industry, look at the market you're in, and even see what other people are getting paid to do what you do. And if you bring it to the table. I had to tell someone, you know what? Based on what I'm paying you in a national average, and I cited a site that told me that 100% of the people with this person's credentials was making less than what she was making. And so that's a message to you that sometimes you have to come with something more than your appetite and your good looks, and you have to get out there. Whether you have a stick, like I told you, I played chess on a cereal box outside. But you're looking at, you know, my uncle played baseball, and you look at how many more opportunities there are for there to be millionaires in baseball than in basketball.
Well, as you were talking about it, made me think of the Negro Leagues.
Yeah.
It also made me think of that movie that Billy D. Williams and Richard Pryor was in, the Bingo All-Stars.
Yeah.
And what happened when one of the young players went to the white leagues and their whole countenance changed, like this is the beginning of the end. So we had it, but we always want to go over there and check their stuff out. Or we get paid. They pay us better. Look at Deion Sanders. He's now at Jackson State.
Yes.
Isn't that beautiful? He could have went anywhere. Big ups to him.
Yes, and he's bringing others with him. And I'd like to see others. I would talk to my friends. I'd say, you mean your child doesn't even have one black college on their list? A young lady came into my office. She ended up not going to an HBCU, but she was in a journalism workshop with me. And her mother came, and her mother had a lot of respect for me. And her mother said she was getting ready to go to college. And she named some, I'm going to say Rudy Poo because I never heard of it before, college in North Carolina. So I sat there at my desk and pulled up the information. Didn't see anybody look like me on there. Saw how much it cost and everything. And I told the girl what her mama wouldn't tell her. I said, your mama don't need to send you here. I said, this school, and this young lady was really active in NAACP and everything. And she wasn't gonna get that at that school. So I sat there and I pulled information on a number of schools in Texas, and and I even did Grambling, and I did a Southern. Also, I keeping it close because I knew I wasn't going to get her to go to FAMU. And
you still have Prairie View there?
yeah, I looked in Prairie View because of what she wanted to study and everything, and Texas Southern. But I even looked at Wiley College. I looked at different colleges. Then I looked at the PWIs also. And I said, you need to look at one of these schools. So she visited a few. She ended up going to the University of Houston. But at least, I made her look at them and see. And I knew her mom could not afford it. And her mom had health issues. I said, your mom can't, if something happened to your mom, you can't, the little Rudy Poot town in North Carolina, she would have had to travel hours to get to an airport, even to get here to her mom. And so I said, your mom is trying to give you the world. She loves you. I don't. I'm going to tell you the reality and what you're doing to her. You're going to have your mom going into debt. And somebody needs to give you a reality check. And that's what I did for her. And so, I say that, I would love for people to turn back in to join Deion Sanders' son and others who say, if it was good enough for them, and just why are you going there? What are you looking for? What are you trying to achieve? Will it make you better? If you're good, like Bob Hayes, you can go anywhere in the world. And if it's for you, it's going to be for you, regardless of what school you go to.
Well, I'm going to be honest. They lure a lot of young black men to white schools with white young ladies. And money.
And it's interesting because
known fact.
The other night I was watching an episode of Bernie Mac show. And the little boy Jordan said Bernie took him to the barbershop where he got a lot of lessons and everything. And so he came back and he was telling his Aunt Wanda that they were talking about sports and everything. And he said that they told him that you go to NBA to get something in white women. And Aunt Wanda looked at him because we laughed. I laughed at one of my reporters one time because she went to the Dallas Mavs. They have a big gala, and all the Mavs were there with their women, and the only one with a black woman was Dirk Nowitzki,
the white boy.
And I can remember back in the day, I got a call at the black newspaper, and they said, we're having the Orange Bowl coming to town, and it was a team when Troy Aikman was playing. I forgot the school he went to out in California. But anyway, they said, can you get some women, some young ladies to join us for a reception for both football teams? It had never happened before. So I said, okay. So I contacted and got like about 5 or 6 black young ladies to go. So they told us where to go. We got on the bus, and the bus had 40 white girls and then our 6 and me. And I was just there because I wasn't sending, these, 20, 21-year-olds
out by themselves.
Right. And I just saw what was being put in front of them.
Yeah.
And I'm not anti anything. I'm pro things.
But you ain't gonna let nobody get exploited on your watch.
Period. Right. And I just looked at it. I said, look at what happened. And that's one thing that you notice if you look at the pro athletes that went to HBCUs. You find very few who their wives don't look like me or similar. And so it's something that we even think about. Some of them, Deion, when he was at Florida State, when he chose a wife, he chose her from Florida A&M. As Emmett was at University of Florida, and he went. Well, she was out of school then, but he went to James Madison University and got passed. Different people, and you can't say who you fall in love with, but if that's all you have an opportunity.
Or if that's what's pushed on you.
Exactly. And you feel that this will make you closer to those in power. It doesn't.
That's sickening.
It's well,
It's sickening because who you love is your business. But if you are marrying someone for political reasons, how is it that you love them? And if you're only doing it because you want to fit in, how is that love?
and some say, what's love got to do with it?
Yeah, and next thing you know, he crying. She called me the N-word and took all my money.
Well, and you know, and there's some we're used to getting abused by, you know, that we can get. And I'll use it as an example because I was talking about a special issue we're doing on the vice president because we are naive if we think she is not going to be disrespected. She's going to be disrespected by white men, white women, black men, and sadly, black women. And we have to be really, really mindful of that is going to occur because we kind of do it, and we have to stop making excuses and attacking our own when they get in a position. We feel so bad about ourselves a lot of times. We immediately find something to disrespect the person, and we have to call people out and say, no, you won't be allowed to disrespect. We won't be playing that game with you. And unfortunately, Donnie, that is what happens, and we need to put a stop to it. We need to stop being afraid of our children. I don't know about you. Like I tell young people, I say, you may find yourself down at the court house, but you know what? If you go on trial because they said a black man in a purple hoodie and jeans and purple sneakers robbed the 7-Eleven, don't go to the trial in a purple hoodie and jeans and purple sneakers. You know, and others know the game and they know to come, they come in looking innocent, like they couldn't commit a crime and they walk out the door. We come in sometimes looking like what we've been accused of or what their perception of what we would look like. And we end up going to jail. We also need to understand everybody behind bars is not guilty. And
I wanted to ask you about when you were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to bet you knew a strong black man.
Several.
Tell me about that.
Well, you know, and I had my dad, and actually, and he was an entrepreneur in a number of ways, but it was really interesting because he had a bus company in Newark, and he had the buses that had the contracts that did city jobs, and then he had buses that went on bus trips like to Atlantic City, and even down to Florida and across the country. And some of his bus drivers would be, I used to be around him because he was teaching me the business. And you're talking about someone in 7th, 8th grade, 6th grade even. He was showing me how to handle the books and everything. And
damn right, the money.
Yes. And some of the guys would complain, and because my daddy liked to wear nice suits. And but he was paying them really well. And I thought it was really well because they were making like $600 a week. And this was back in the late 60s and early 70s. But if they got paid on Friday,
they were broke on Monday.
They didn't go to the same places my daddy went when he, you know, at the end of the week, they had to go out and be with the women.
Oh.
They had to go out and be at the bars and everything. So they could have used their money for other things, but they rather complain about, you know, oh, he's buying these tailor-made suits and he's doing this and that. And we're always counting other folks' money, but we wouldn't have been concerned about the owner of Trailways or Greyhound. And we're too concerned about people getting money. Oh, they got a $50,000 concert. $50,000 is not any money. And we need to understand that, and we need to stop asking for pennies. We have to realize that we can help others go where they need to go. We can bring some along with us, because I guarantee you, if I'm talking to somebody about advertising, whatever they give me, they're not giving me all they have to give. So why
That's
can't I tell
that's
somebody else?
this is my challenge in business: getting our own to value us and getting others to value us. And you're right, we could charge more. We should charge more, but we know we have to stay in business. So it's almost like we have to have our corporate rate and we have to have our nonprofit rate.
And we have to have, can't you do this for me? And it's like, okay,
That's a relationship, because a relationship is I help you, you help me. But if it's always I'm helping you, that's one-sided. And who wants a one-way relationship?
and that's what we have oftentimes. I had people, someone who I wrote about every week, and other people wrote about this person because his story was about to become a movie. And you go to their website, and they have links to all the white publications.
I know.
None of the black ones. And it's like, then you see folks that get on social media and they pump up somebody who's appeared in a white publication.
See, I was feeling good. Now you about to make me cry. You talking about black white supremacists.
And they're like, oh, it's good because they have it in it. They're putting, because they're pumping you up. But I remember
black white supremacists.
an organization I love, I gave them like 4 out of 16 pages. That's a lot of real estate. And the daily paper here did a little blurb, not 200 words, and they were all over Facebook. Look at what they did. Look at what they did. And I'm like, really?
Sister, here in Baltimore, basketball is a big thing. I graduated from the high school that at the time, 1983, national champions.
Okay.
Dunbar. Not long ago, someone wrote a book about the Dunbar basketball team. Latino writer out of New York.
Okay, did I lose you? Well, what you're seeing in the back is we wait for him. That's my beautiful grandbaby, and that's Dallas County Commissioner John Wiley Price. Fearless leaders to future leaders, and that's what we try to do, highlight and showcase in Texas Metro News, Garland Journal, and Odd Messenger. And just keeping it rolling for you.
Keep going, keep going. Well, my point is that the Dunbar story went down, but the guys were so excited that someone else wrote about them. And I was like, write your own book. Why do I want to read what somebody from New York says about you? I want to know what your take is.
Yes.
So it's like we have this notion that it's like we have very little faith in ourselves.
Well, I got the Dallas Morning News here contacted me. They said, we aren't doing a good job of covering our community. And I'm like, wow, an epiphany. And they said they wanted to partner with me. The timing was right. I said, they're trying new leadership. Let's do something together. And
that's the bodyguard.
That's your bodyguard ain't got nothing on this Jersey girl. But anyway, but it was like they came and they talked to me, and we talked about how we can make it work. And it's about mutual respect, because it's not like Big Brother, you come in here and you're gonna take over or anything. I know I brought something to the table, and in fact, I told them they were doing a story, and they said, "Well, how did you feel?" And I said they said about Texas Metro News partnering with the Dallas Morning News. And I said, well, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the best paper in the state of Texas to partner with the Dallas Morning News. And then I said, but I told him I'm for real with him. I talked to him. I said, people are going to be saying, oh, every time we get something going good that's Black, we sell it out to the man. And this is what I said to them at the morning news. And I said, well, I just want you to know, if anyone says that I sold out to the man, I'm going to tell them, no, to the contrary, I bought them. And I just put it back on them. I told them, if anybody, you know, I'm not going in there feeling inferior. I don't have this imposter syndrome because I have my stuff together. And I know I chose, just like I chose Florida.
Wow. You saw it coming. You saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah. Just like I chose whatever. I could have went to other schools. I chose Florida A&M because I wanted to go there. But sometimes, and that has been a rift between Black organizations, that sometimes when people are accepted by others, they say, oh, they couldn't come over here because they couldn't make it. And I know that I could make it. I know that there are plenty of people, like I say, the likes of a Bob Hayes could have made it anywhere. There are a number, you know, come on, give us a try, give us a chance. You know, you see that we're still having a hard time getting chances for our Black men and women to be professional coaches.
How is mass incarceration there in Texas? I know Louisiana has one of the most vicious prison systems. I know here in my city, Baltimore, my neighborhood actually leads the state in terms of people in prison. What's it like in Texas?
Well, you know, and I wish we had time to talk about what's going on in Baltimore, because I had talked to several people. They have Monday morning calls. In fact, they probably just got off of it, and they're talking about equity in media. But we've had so many people to get off because of DNA. We had a district attorney, Craig Watkins, who followed up and saw that, you know, we're neck and neck with Louisiana. Louisiana's bad. I would just say, Black men, why would you go and commit a crime in Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and Texas? Just why would you even do that? And but we've had a lot of instances where people have been falsely accused, where they spent 20, 30 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. And a lot of them have gotten out and they've gotten paid. One person, Joyce Ann Brown, spent 9 years, 5 months, and 24 days. And before her death, she had not been paid yet or compensated for it. And you saw that there was prosecutorial misconduct. So we have issues, but we have Dallas County, Texas, not Alabama, has the most Black female judges in the country. And there was a wave, and more are coming in. And some more females just announced last week. But if you look at Dallas County and look down in Houston, I think the last election they had like maybe 18 or 20 Black female judges. So things are happening, and we have to do more. We have to get more involved, but we have to stop criticizing. Dr. Naeem Akbar said that we ride by in our cars and see brothers on the corner with their pants hanging down or whatever, and we tisk, tisk, tisk. And he said, okay, what are you going to do when one of them brothers show up at your door to see your daughter?
Oh, no. She already got the memo.
But she got the memo, but she's adhering to it. But what memo did the Black young men get about where they got?
They did not get a memo.
They did not get a memo. Okay. And the thing about it is, though, and his premise was, you got to be concerned about them brothers on the corner.
I totally agree.
You can't dog them out. You got to, some of them, all they need is for somebody to say, hey, brother, come let me talk to you.
Since I live around it. Someone helps, some don't. You can only help somebody they may not want help, but they got to be willing to listen.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it's much easier listening on the corner than it is over the jail.
Oh yeah, talking a plexiglass. But do you know Bishop Antonio Palmer
I do now.
or Stephen Lottie, Sandy Bartlett, Carl Snowden, Dee Goodwin, Mike Lewis?
Carl Snowden, yeah.
Yeah, those are all people that are working at equity and media, and they're visiting the stations and publications and
The can't hear you the same.
they visiting with the Baltimore Sun and a number of other media outlets to talk about fairness in media.
Well, Baltimore, let me just tell you, has one newspaper, one daily newspaper, and that's the Baltimore Sun. We also have
shines for who?
huh?
They said the sun only shines for who?
Yeah. You have the Afro, you have the Baltimore Times, you got Be More News.
Wonderful.
And I tend to cover business and politics in particular.
And that is good. And you know what? And we have to this year, businesses are going to be called on task for not advertising with us. These companies, their audits, they have these agencies that are saying we aren't going to spend any money, and then they want to throw pennies at you.
I want to ask you something. So say you have this major, by the way, what was the name of the book? You had mentioned a book. Young lady Tamathia Flowers wants to know the name of the book you mentioned. Hopefully they will write their own book. I'm not sure.
You're talking about the book about the school, about Dunbar.
Oh, they were talking to me. Okay. Well, I don't know. Don't want to. We have to support our own. That's a no-brainer. No one is going to tell our story like us. Right now, as I told you, I'm writing a book on Black Wall Street. There's so much history that has been hidden right in front of us. So you're there in Texas, and Oklahoma's right next door. Yeah. Have you ever heard of John Horse?
Well, that's a very familiar name, and so
Chief John Horse. He was a Seminole Indian.
Okay.
And he fought in the Seminole War.
Okay.
He fought all the way to Oklahoma, where they promised him his freedom. The U.S. government lied. This was 1840.
No.
And then he went through Texas to Mexico, Nacimiento. And he became the Border Patrol, the Seminole Scouts, guarding the border for Mexico. And then he landed back in Texas. The website is johnhorse.com.
Okay.
But we have so much that we have done as a people that's been denied us, that's been stripped from us. And the Texas Metro News is so important because you keep it going. And I thank you. I thank God for the strong shoulders that you stand on, those people in your lineage. I know you had a strong daddy, strong granddaddy, strong uncle in your background, because that's the kind of queen you are. When you know who you are, you can celebrate others. And that's what we don't have enough of. Everybody feeling low self-esteem.
Yeah. And we need to do something, because now we have a culture that's coming up where they're all in their feelings. You say boo, they start hooing, and because the toughness is not there, because we started getting away, deviating from the teachings that we had.
About mothers and fathers.
About mothers, fathers, respect.
Respect.
Because I say my message to these 25 and 30-year-olds, in 25 or 30 years from now, you're going to hate yourself, because you know what? You're going to have become what you hold in disdain. You have such disrespect for your elders. You don't think older people have anything of any value. But guess what? You're going to look up in the mirror one day and you're going to face one of them older people. And how you're going to feel about yourself.
My grandma, my granddaddy, they had me in the presence of older people all the time. Every Monday at 4 o'clock at grandma's house, the praying man would come over.
Okay.
And the praying man prayed. I'm 7, 8 years old. Cheryl, he prayed all the way through Captain Chesapeake. That was a little TV show for kiddies. He prayed for about 2 hours straight every Monday. Grandpop, the praying man here, but I'm 55 now. So that lesson 45 years ago is still with me of the power of prayer. But it was real. It wasn't fake.
Right.
We got down on them knees for 2 hours straight.
See?
But that was training.
The training that we don't have. We have taught these folks to believe that, and it's not like it's a little me, little you and a big me, but it's just understanding that you don't know everything. And that person older than you could teach you something. And on a certain extent, you are equals as human beings, but in the whole scheme of things, a 60-year-old has forgotten more than that 30-year-old has learned.
You said Uncle Eddie, right?
Yes.
Uncle Eddie. I could not imagine calling my Uncle Tommy.
Yeah.
What?
Exactly.
Never happened. It would never happen, ever.
But we're changing because you mentioned Prairie View. Prairie View A&M's president told the students to call her Ruth.
She bumped her head. She gave away her respect.
And so people were defending that and saying, well, she's trying to change the culture. I said, but that's not our culture. That's not our culture. And then further, I said, well, I guess I won't ever be teaching at Prairie View because I don't need a student coming in there saying, you want us to call you Professor Smith and you don't have a doctor, and Dr. Ruth says, call her Ruth. No, I'm like, we won't even have that argument. You can take culture and making people feel a certain way and everything, but that's why
Cheryl, I tell my children, I'm not your friend.
Exactly. I'm
not your friend. I don't care if you like me.
Yeah. You can't smoke, you can't drink, you can't cuss. And I'm gonna tell you, when I became a real you could see the training. One time I slipped in front of my mother and said, damn it. And I was like, oh, mother, I'm sorry. I said, because I don't cuss. It's your other children, Daryl and Tracy, they cuss. I just threw my brother and sister under the bus. And I just couldn't believe it. It just slipped out. But nowadays, and see, we have to look at even the writers. When we look at the writers who are writing for television.
Yes, ma'am. Come on.
And I've said for years that when people talk to me about talking white, it is not about subject and verb agreement. It is about when you cuss your mama out. Then I say you acting white, because we don't do that. I just think about now, if I had ever told my mother, knock before you come in my room.
You'd be homeless, boo-boo.
Or get out of my room.
You'd be homeless.
What made you, this is my room, this is my phone. And then I tell you, and so many times I've seen it happen. The young girl is like 15 to 16. She's with her mama. The mama comes up, is talking to me, and the mama says, oh, and this is Mary. I'm gonna call her what's that? I'm gonna call her Karen. So the little girl is in her phone. She looks up and goes back down her phone. Don't say nothing. And so usually I ask, how old is she? And then at 15, 16, I say, yep, they're that age when they don't speak when an adult speaks to them. And I just call a parent out. Because if you let them get in it, it's just like when you bring your child in my house. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell your child to sit down and don't be standing on my furniture or something like that. At some point in time, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say, sit down, baby. Because
that's why the prisons are filled. We took prayer out to schools. We said you can't spank children. Johnny time out. Dr. Spock, go stand in the corner. Wasn't no time out. My mother's time out was a frying pan.
I even think about with I told a friend last night that when my mother came to visit, I told her about the kids. I said, mother, and she said, yes. I said, I don't give the kids candy. So she didn't say nothing. To my credit, she probably was thinking, this girl done lost her mind. She didn't say anything. And now with this little one right here, he could take the candy out my mouth if he want to. But I have since learned I was way out of line.
How?
To tell my mother not to give her grandbaby some candy.
You hadn't learned the lesson yet. Grandparents have a privilege parents don't have.
I was like, and I think about it today, and I said, grace was there because there would have been a time that I would have been on the floor.
Did you have to go pick out your switch?
Not from my mom, but from her sisters in Florida when I would visit Florida. And oh,
that sounds painful.
you know, a switch. But I do remember the time my brother played hooky from karate school, and it just so happened my mother had gone to watch him do whatever they do. And so when he got home, she asked him how was karate school. He said, it was good. We learned a lot. She said, come on in this room and teach me what you learned. And it was
it got ugly.
It got ugly. The only thing that could save us with a whooping a lot of times was if the phone rang. And so I went to the mother telephone to try to save my brother, because when I went in there, she was doing some moves Bruce Lee probably didn't know.
My mother was a terrorist. Osama bin Laden didn't have nothing on my mother.
See? And you're here today.
To God be the glory. Because if we don't put the fear of God in our children, we leave it for the police or the correctional officer. That's a fact.
Right. Definitely. We have to balance that fear with love, but we have to tell them you can't let up, and you have to teach respect. You have to teach reverence. But these kids, I'm not gonna let you disrespect me. If you rude to me, I'm gonna be rude to you. I said, you have to decide if you're gonna be a rude person in life, because no matter how disrespectful someone is to you, you're not gonna in turn be that back to them. And you decide what kind of life you are going to lead, and you don't alter from it.
I find a lot of our young people sure want to be victims.
Oh.
I mean, they want to be I don't want to be I want to be a victor. What happens to us in life is not our fault, but our reaction is all of our responsibility. Where does it become fashionable where I blame you for my dilemma?
Well, it starts young. It starts with, I can remember being in school, and yeah, I was glad that I was never the last one picked. But for me, when they said, okay, we're not going to let you pick teams, pick a captain, because you're standing there saying, whether it was volleyball or kickball or whatever, you had the two captains and they pick who they want to be on that team. And they said it was bad for the children's self-esteem if they were the last ones picked. But guess what? If I were a teacher in that situation, the last ones picked would be the captains next time.
That's all.
You don't have to know. And then you're saying you get a trophy for participation. No, get your butt out there and do some work.
Wiser but weaker. That's what the Bible says. Wiser but weaker.
And we can't blame them.
So it's so much I got to ask you about. Shirley Chisholm, Ross Baraka, but I only ask you for an hour of your time. Are you going to be able to come back again? Because I don't want to steal all your Monday morning.
I will. And this is with everything that's going on, because we've had several power outages, and unfortunately, I haven't had one here.
Praise the Lord.
Yes, but some people were actually freezing overnight, and
these are
times, and we have to reach into ourselves. One thing that I can remember when I was at KKDA, I was going to be interviewing Dionne Warwick, and so I asked listeners to tell me what question they think I should ask. Of course, they want to know about the psychic network. So when I got to interview her, I asked her about it, and she said, "You know what, Cheryl? We live in a society where people don't care about one another." And saying you have to think about what makes a person so desperate that they would spend their whole paycheck, all their extra income calling a psychic hotline. I said, she said, because they don't have anybody to talk to. She said, and it's true. We live in Texas where there have been people who have been dead in their homes for 2 weeks at a time because we don't reach out. We don't care what's going. When we ask somebody how you doing before they get an answer out, we going on to something else. So we shut down and we're not listening to them. And it's really something you're really thinking about. Do you care how someone is doing? Are you reaching out? And I've started calling people on my phone. And I started the A's. I haven't gotten past the B's because the calls get to be long. But I just said, this is just a wellness call. I'm just calling to see how you're doing. And I've had called some numbers and the people don't have the number again. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I was calling Donnie, but I guess his number has changed. And they want to talk for 5 minutes. When I tell them what I'm talking.
Is that why Clubhouse is so successful?
Yeah, I hear that's the place to be.
Maybe it's therapy.
And that's because we aren't reaching out. We aren't sharing. We're only caring about ourselves. And that's not good. That's not a good way to live. When you have people, you think about dying alone because you have people who want to keep the meal on wheels person talking. Their route becomes longer because if that meal on wheels person does not come to their door, they don't see people for weeks at a time. That's the society we're in today.
How can people support you, Sharon? Thank you so much.
Well,
thank you for this time.
And I love for people to sign up for our newsletter. We're on TexasMetroNews.com. You can check us out. We're on Facebook and social media platforms. We have the Garland Journal. That's the Garland Journal. And then we have iMessenger. Can you see it? iMessenger. There they are. Texas Metro News, Garland Journal, iMessenger. And you Google us and you can find us. We're part of the National Newspaper Publishers Association and, of course, the National Association of Black Journalists and Society Professional Journalists. We are, I have an outstanding team of people. We have one of the founders of NABJ, Norma Adams Wade, that works with us, and a strong team. We have a fellow. And we're doing all kinds of things to.
Have you met Charles Robinson in NABJ?
Yes, of course, of course.
I have to confess that that's one of my mentors.
Oh, look now, see, and he's I was trying to think of something. Yes, Charles is very active with the NABJ, very, very active, and
great mentor, very patient with me.
We have to take care of one another because those who are in positions, like I encourage everyone. I really love, we had there's like a picture up there. You can't see it from here, but this is Roland Martin. And I know a lot of information that I got on experts talking about COVID and the analysts that don't get on mainstream. He has on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And I think that's, again, we got to come hard against these advertisers. You need to ask anybody who you do business with, are you advertising with the Black press?
So look, you plugged NABJ, but you're a member of National Newspaper Publishers Association too?
Yes.
So for those who don't know, you got to tell them about NNPA. I love NABJ, but I can relate to NNPA more because I'm an owner.
Yes, and that is that you're an owner, you are a publisher, you have more freedom. People in NABJ work for NNPA. There are journalists who are publishers, and I happen to be one of them, but a lot of the publishers are business people. They're business people, and NABJ made up the people, and that's the difference. And when you call me as an NABJ member, when I worked for another entity, I may have to get permission from someone. When you called me, a photographer called and he said, Cheryl, you need press credentials. I said, for what? He said, for the NFL. I said, no, I'm taking a knee. And he kept on talking. He said, I'll get you that picture. I'll get you that money shot. I said, the only money shot you can get me is of Kaepernick on the field playing. And I got off the phone with him and I felt kind of empowered. I felt like I had juice because I was saying, I'm not running anything on the NFL.
So I gotta ask you, here's the hot question today. Advertising the vaccine.
Advertising it?
I've seen outlets promoting taking the vaccine, and I can't do that because I'm personally not convinced it has gone through the scientific method.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. Let me tell you one thing I say, and it's like that vaccine, and you look at over 30 years of HIV, you look at pancreatic cancer, you look at herpes, and no vaccine for it. But this is a situation where and most of the people you see dying are African American and Latino, but when you see pictures of people getting the vaccine, and I get calls from people at stations, the majority of them are Anglo. Now, just think about if all the people who were showing up to get vaccines were Black and brown, what would we be saying? I understand it's
We've never had a reason to trust this government. They've lied on multiple counts.
And we definitely, and there are people who have gotten the vaccine now that have said for sure if Trump was still in office, they would not have gotten it. And I know a number of people who have gotten it, and I've heard from a number of experts. I was talking to Mr. Dick Gregory's wife, Lillian Gregory, a couple of weeks ago because it would have been their 62nd wedding anniversary. And I know when he died in his 80s, he said between him and his wife, they didn't have one prescription. And so she was telling me she has never taken the flu vaccine and she's never had the flu. So there are things that we need to do. I don't know. It's kind of like CBD or alcohol or even cigarettes. Someone in our community, I know about advertising. Are they paying for it? We're sharing information about it because I do feel that personally, and I know we could get into conspiracy theories and everything, there was a feeling that this is man-made.
Clearly. Escape from some laboratory in China. Somebody was messing around and it got loose.
And with help from this government. And it's billions, this is trillions of money, dollars. And so we have to think about just what we're going to do. And we have to, and I do have some people, I know some folks who work for FEMA and they did not take in a recent deployment because it would have to deal with dispensing the vaccine. So I do understand, and but I have issues with almost every bit of medicine and wonder because usually they have a side effect or something else is going to occur. And we've never dealt with anything like this before. So if talking about advertising and some of the folks who have spoken out about it and someone who have taken it, if they are, they need to advertise with us. We can make a decision about whether we take it, but they still need to put that money to us. And that money can help us to do some other things to empower our people and to build. And we have to do like several rappers did, which is what several other folks did back in the day with alcohol. We have to take that and prostitution. We have to take that so-called bad money and use it to uplift and make our conditions better for generations.
Good deal. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us this morning. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, you
if
can
they want to advertise with your 3 publications.
Okay, you can catch me on Facebook. I'm Pen on Fire on across all platforms. Pen on Fire, a writing pen, PENON Fire, and you can call me at 214-941-0110, and then TexasMetroNews.com. That's the easiest way. You can even look on DallasNews.com and find Texas Metro News.
I'm so glad to have you this morning. I've learned so much. I didn't realize you had 3 publications. I knew there were 2, but now I know, and I got to do a better job helping promote you.
Well, let's work together, okay? We got plenty to do, and I can come up there and we can go and sit on a wharf and have a good time.
I'll show you some good seafood here in Baltimore.
Oh, yes. Dwayne Wickham, he knows I comment all the time because he puts these big pictures of these big crabs, and him and Sheila Brooks and all of those NABJers get together and make me wish I was there.
It's all good. We can get you some in Texas.
All right.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Up to date, down tomorrow. Do your day and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am my brother's keeper. Good morning.